I often get asked about which my favorite teams are beyond the top three, the big three: Boston, Vancouver, Dallas. And right now, I'm having a hard time cheering for Boston, Vancouver, or Dallas because Boston's where they are because of their goalie and not much else. Pasternak, too. On the upside, Vetrano's back, and Vetrano had a goal last night, so Frankie's on his way. Um, but Dallas has been a giant disappointment, as I had feared they would be. And Vancouver has performed exactly as I thought they would. Um, the difference is I thought they'd be the worst in the league, and they're not quite there, but they're not a playoff team either. So, in terms of which teams I cheer for, this does change from time to time. And it changes based on a few things. And no, none of it's a bandwagon thing. It's the direction a team is headed and whether or not they're fun to watch. Like, let's look at Edmonton. Okay. Am I on the bandwagon? No. Am I cheering for Edmonton? Not usually. I cheer for Nugent Hopkins. I love Connor McDavid. Draisaitl's fun to watch. Um, I like Talbot a lot. There's a lot of things to like in Edmonton, but I hate Zach Kassian with a passion. And I don't like Lucic at all. So in terms of teams I cheer for, this logo is not at the top. But some teams are moving up. In terms of my cheering for them, Columbus. I mean, Columbus was one of my. If you go back to the teams where the video I did months and months and months ago, where I ranked my favorite teams from 30 through 1, Columbus is not very low on that chart. But Columbus is bumping its way up that chart. And it's honestly, it's so much to do with what this team has been able to accomplish this year. I know it's still early, because until the All-Star break, you can still say it's early. But man, they've been impressive. The Rangers have proven me right a little bit in that I didn't think they were going to fall off the cliff like a lot of people did. But they're higher up than I thought they would be in the overall standings. I didn't pick them for top 5 in the entire NHL, and that's where they are. Pittsburgh's done exactly what I said they do. Chicago's been actually a little bit better than I thought they would be. But part of what that is Nashville's nowhere near what I thought they were going to be either. And it's funny because there was an article a couple weeks ago on Sportsnet, I think, where they said Nashville is a Stanley Cup contender again because they had a good November. And it's like, they had a good month. They're not a cup contender yet. They need more than a good month to be a cup contender. But everybody's anxious to see Nashville do it. I've been disappointed with Nashville. But Victor Arvidsson's been their best player. And I've read a couple articles about that. Victor Arvidsson's their best player. Yeah, I wonder who called that after last year's playoffs. During last year's playoffs, I was the biggest Arvidsson fan, even when he wasn't scoring goals or points. I'm like, man, this kid is so good with the puck, and he's so smart without it. And he's such an intense player, and I love the guy. And now he's their best player. And you know, I mean, along with PK Subban would be their best defenseman. But it's been impressive to watch. Carolina has been better than I said they would be. They're still not in a playoff spot, largely because the Metro Division's so damn good. The number 2 wildcard spot team is Washington. They're ranked 9th overall in the league standings going into tonight's games. So you have to be top 9 in the NHL to get a wildcard spot. Or you have to catch Boston and be in their division. And Boston's 14th overall. Tampa's 16th. Tampa's been disappointing. Losing Stamkos has hurt them more this year than expected. Calgary was a disappointment early. They've come on lately. They're 7-3 in their last 10, so they're making the right moves. San Jose's cracked the top 10 now, being 7-3 in their last 10. St. Louis is sort of treading water, and they look like they could fall. But again, the West is very poor. 3 of the bottom 4 teams in the league are in the Western Conference. So Arizona, Colorado, and the Canucks. And the only team out of the bottom four that isn't in the West is the New York Islanders. The next two above them are Detroit and Buffalo. Detroit has been worse than I thought they were going to be. Dallas has been far worse than I thought they were going to be either. Um, and yet there's Toronto at 22nd. They're probably a couple spots above where I said they were going to be. But it's funny because, again, before the season I said I thought Toronto was going to be better than certain teams, and I got a lot of, what? No, they won't. They're the Leafs. They're still going to be the worst in the league. And they're not the worst in the league. Florida, I was really pulling for coming into this season, but with all the disastrous results and the fact they fired Gallant the way they did, I'm not cheering for Florida anymore. I kind of like the idea of Florida finishing as low as possible in the standings so that Panthers management has to come out at the end of the year and say, oh, no, this made perfect sense. This is what we needed to do. The 103-point team we had last year. We couldn't have done that again this year. So we had to rip the whole thing to pieces. And it's not as much how many people they took out, it's who they took out. And it's who they kept. And it's the amount of money they gave some of the guys they kept. And the term they gave the guys they kept. You know, second and third line players are now getting 5 and 6 year terms. Like, it is crazy. I am old enough to remember a time when only the first line guys, your top two defensemen, got those big long-term contracts. And it was 2 or 3 year contract for anybody who was third line. Now it's 5 years. Why? You're paying for 5 years for a guy you could easily replace on not necessarily waivers, but through the draft or through free agency. You're now paying these guys through the nose, and they're replaceable for cheaper. So, you know, there's going to be a market correction, I think, at the end of this year or the end of next year, because I could see them doing it again. But Carolina's been fun to watch in the games I've seen of theirs. So they're definitely moving up my list a little bit in terms of who I cheer for. But I've been watching a lot of Columbus, and really and Minnesota. The funny thing about Minnesota is, I'll watch Minnesota, but I don't like Minnesota. So Minnesota's probably moved up a couple of notches in terms of teams I cheer for, but not as high as they would be if they weren't Minnesota. Although I do love Dubnyk, and I hope Dubnyk wins Vezina. And if they finish top 6, they're number 6 overall right now. If they finish in that spot, he's got to win the Hart. Has to. I don't see how you can take it away from him unless somebody in Columbus emerges as a Hart candidate. The funny part is Columbus being first overall, and they've only played 31 games, and all the teams below them have played 35 or 34 or 33. And yet, who's your Hart candidate out of Columbus? Bobrovsky? And then Atkinson? Werenski? Werenski's not a Hart candidate yet. He's definitely a Calder candidate. And if Columbus finishes first overall, I don't see how Werenski doesn't get the Calder Trophy. Because being a top 4 defenseman on a team that wins a President's Trophy is pretty impressive your first year out. Especially considering Columbus's record, which is poor, to say the least. And yet their reward, right now, if the playoffs started right now, would be playing Washington in the first round. And I wouldn't bet against Washington in the first round this year. Because something's different with Washington. It's different. And we'll see how it goes for them. But one team that's moved up my list in terms of who I cheer for or don't, Philly. The Flyers have really impressed me. I really like every single young player they've got going for them right now. I've always cheered for Michael Neuwirth more than cheered for Steve Mason. Mason's been good. During the win streak, he was very good. I still don't think he is a Stanley Cup winning goaltender. But then again, the Flyers have got to the finals before without stellar goaltending. You can get there with competent goaltending. Let me know in the comments below what team you feel has impressed you the most and you found yourself cheering for that you otherwise wouldn't. And which team you thought you were going to come into the season cheering for, like me with Florida, and now you find yourself saying, no, screw you guys. No, I can't cheer for you. That's something that normally happens to me in the playoffs when I'm trying to cheer for a Canadian team to win the Stanley Cup, and it's a Canadian team I just can't stand, whether it's these guys or it's these guys. Sometimes it's the Leafs. I'm like, I should be cheering for Canada. I can't. I can't. So, yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. Anyways, it's fun to look at this because we're around the middle of the season. We're getting close to the middle of the season, and we'll be able to do grades at that point. But let me know what you think, and I will be back again later to discuss more hockey-related matters with you guys. I may do a trivia today. I may do like a hockey guy Christmas trivia. Maybe I can come up with some. I'll just theme it as Christmas and see if I can come up with some Christmas stuff for trivia. That might be kind of fun. Anyways, thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're just browsing through, and I will be back to talk to y'all again soon.